Thanks for that acclamation. Just what I needed to hear. I don't know about anybody else. So, Scott wrote that we're going to talk about intent, impact, and consequences. Sounds pretty communication-like. You know, sometimes I get these sermon titles that come to me, and I'm not sure where they came from or why they're here, but I go with them because that's what I'm called to do, is go with whatever comes to me from Spirit. And I actually think this one works pretty well for today's reading. We're 4 Sundays into Lent, 1 Sunday away from what we know as Palm Sunday or Passion Sunday, which is next Sunday. And Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem to be crucified. And he stops at the home of his 3 friends, Lazarus and Martha and Mary. And Mary takes some very expensive perfume. We're told that the perfume she used, the quantity she used it, would be equivalent to a year's wages for a laborer. And she pours out this perfume so that its fragrance fills the house. She pours it out on Jesus' feet. All of these rather countercultural moves. As a priest or rabbi, you would expect his head to be anointed, but it's not. If you're the crooked treasurer Judas Iscariot, you don't want the money spent anyway, but it is. And what's really interesting is, she didn't take the money from the church treasury. It was her money. Sometimes we forget, as we follow Jesus through the Gospels, that for the most part, the people funding him and his disciples are women of means. And probably most counterculturally of all, she, a woman, anoints Jesus, a man. Not done in the Hebrew Scriptures anywhere. So it's all pretty countercultural, this stuff. Into the midst of this comes Judas Iscariot saying, she shouldn't have spent that money. And what's interesting is in this gospel, we're actually given a little comment about how he was really a thief and took the money, embezzled the money from the treasury of the common treasury of those following Jesus. And Jesus says to him, and perhaps to the other disciples thinking similar thoughts, maybe even to us, leave her alone. Again, pretty countercultural for him to defend a woman like that to a group of men, for the most part. And he says some really interesting things to follow that. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. Is this day the day of his burial? No. So if she bought it for that, there's something in her that didn't let her keep it for that day. To pour it out extravagantly this day. Then he says something that throws biblical commentators into fits of frenzy. For you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. And people are puzzled by that. I think it's interesting that he doesn't say it in the past tense or the future tense, but in the present tense. You do not always have me. Your mission to care for the widow and the orphan will always be there. It has been, it is now, and it will be. But you do not always have me. If we think about that, I don't think it's a statement about Jesus. I think it's a statement about us. On those days when we forget whose we are, when we're feeling unloved and unlovable, I think those are the days Jesus is talking about here. And they're not his days, they're our days. So what's the intent to all of this? I think the intent for Judah's statement is stop spending the money. More for the treasury means more for me. I think the intent of Jesus' statement is what we just said. You will always have your ministry. You will always have your call. You will always have those people that will reach out to you in need. But the source of all of that, your call, your ministry, your mission, need, you won't always have, or you don't always have. And so the focus is on us. When I thought about the intent of what Mary's action is, I thought about, and I know you guys think of this as ancient history, and it is for you. For the rest of us, not so much. Of the rock musical Jesus Christ Superstar that came out in, anybody know the year?
1973.
Ah, the internet says 1970, but I'll go with 73. It was the internet, so who knows? Was it the early 70s?
Yeah.
She knows.
Anybody
And I think of the song that's in that musical, I Don't Know How to Love Him. Can you hear it in your mind's ear? Isn't it funny? You can't remember what you had for breakfast yesterday, but you can hear, I don't know how to love him. And all the lyrics and the tune in your mind's ear. I think that Mary just really didn't know what to do with this love she felt for Jesus. And it's as if she's the only prophet in the room who gets what Jerusalem means in 6 days. the one who gets that he's on his way to his death. And she knows she's going to lose him, and she doesn't know what to do. So she does this effusive, extravagant act of love and pours perfume on his feet. I know many in this room have been in that place where you knew you were about to lose somebody so dear to you, and you so wanted to do something for her, for him, for them. And all you could do was your extravagant act of love, whatever it was. Now they tell us in communication that intent and impact are not necessarily the same thing. Those of you who are in management probably have had seminars on the intent of what you say may not have the impact you hope for. Or in other fields, doesn't really matter. In relationship, how many times have you said, "That's not what I meant"? And the other person says, "But it's what you said." And you say, "No, that's not what I said." And they say, "Yes, it is." So then you own it, and you say, "That's not what I meant." And they say, "But that's how it felt." Now, we can be in either one of those positions in relationship. We can be the one who said it, or we can be the one flying the arrows back, because we still have our two woven fingers to send them back with. I think the impact of what Judas says is brushed off and ignored. And truly, the commentary that exists right in Scripture about that, the statement made, would suggest that we need to brush it off and ignore it. What's the impact of what Jesus said? Well, for a lot of preachers today, it's about, wow, did Jesus really say forget about the poor? And so they struggle with that. I'm going to struggle with that. That's not what he meant. No, he didn't say forget about all those people that need you. It's not what he was saying. What's the impact of what Mary does? Surprise? A year's worth of wages? Wonder? What was she thinking? You have Judas's contempt for what she's done, and you have Jesus' defense of her for what she's done. All that is part of the impact. So what are the consequences? Well, for Judas, we know the consequences of corrupt people in positions of power. They get rich. They get more greedy. Their lust for power increases. They make friends with other corrupt people. They take their payoff. They lose their sense of self. They get lost. They lose their way. And sometimes, as for Judas, they lose their lives. What are the consequences for what Jesus says? I think we hear a very human cry of frustration. You know what, kids? I'm about to die. I know it's going to happen. And you still don't get it. I don't don't think he gives up on us. I don't think he stops loving us any more than he stops loving any of the people in that room with him. He's just frustrated. I think we hear his human cry of needing to be loved. I'm going to be gone. Of needing to know somebody cares. Of needing to feel that I've made a difference. Did he want on his cross King of the Jews? Or did he want something that didn't fit? I love them. And now they can love freely, fully. And I made up a word, unfetteredly. No bonds, no chains. Without counting, like the son in last week's scripture. Without judgment. Without fear. But do we? Do we love without fear? I think the consequences of Mary's action is that of living out as imperfectly as we do what loving is. The gift that connects us to another human being in a way that no amount of misunderstanding, lack of understanding, or frustration can make go away. I think Mary's action has the consequence of extravagant love poured out in bodily contact. Contact that some commentators, some persons there deemed inappropriate, some deemed sexual. I think Mary's actions had the consequence of love being wrenched from her toes, her gut, her eyes, her heart. Love beyond description for its pain and for its almost too much to hold joy. I think that love might sound something like what we're reading in Accidental Saints in our book club. It's read in part as a eulogy to a woman who spent most of her childhood and all of her adult life in a wheelchair. And it's written and told by her best friend, who nobody else befriended until she did. And here's what the friend writes. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me, for seeing through the facade. Thanks for driving me through the thunderstorm with the top down. For any of us who have done that, you were right, we didn't get wet. Right? If you drive fast enough. Thanks for praying and for refusing to pray and thereby becoming a living prayer. Thanks for your honesty, for your frustration and anger and enthusiasm and joy. Thank you for your poet's heart, for the music of honest and beautiful words that turn the struggles of life into a song of shared humanity. Thanks for seeing, really seeing, people who often get overlooked. Restaurant staff who become friends, a panhandler asking for change, and me. Thank you for nudging me, okay, pushing me, yanking me sometimes, kicking and screaming outside of my comfort zone. Thanks for sharing candidly your unique view of life, the universe, and everything, and saying out loud what other people are thinking, but are too inhibited to express. I think all of this could be a prayer to Jesus. Thank you for loving me in our messy, glorious, human way, and for teaching me so much about what love means. My friend, I shall miss your poetry, singing, laughter, courage, honesty, and your deep beauty in this world. And she ends by saying, God, help me to keep and carry all the richness you have given me, to grow it and share it abundantly with the world. We will have beautiful, hilarious stories to tell and songs to sing together when we pick up where we left off, when we all meet again. I hope this is our impact and the consequence of our intent. And I pray that the consequence be that we stand hand in hand and feel Emmanuel, God with us, this day and always. Amen.